Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 356. Forgotten People of the Scenario. Part 1. It had been a week since Joonghyuk disappeared. In the meantime, the atmosphere of Kim Dokja's company changed a bit. The people were visibly reticent. Rather than express it or talk about it, they silently trained. Joonghyuk was one of them. They trained their skills and their bodies. They pretended to do this while watching a certain person. I can't stand it anymore. How long will this atmosphere last? Lee Hyun-sung, who was using Great Mountain Push against the ground, was shocked by Joonghyun's exclamation while Shin Yusung's shoulders shook as she used advanced diverse communication. The most surprised one was Lee Jae-hai, who was training in kendo. Joonghyun pressed her. Jae-hai, you. Are you not going to talk to Dokja Sasai anymore? I don't know. Are you still angry? No matter what, you should have a conversation. Lee Jae-hai shouted, I'm not angry. If I think about it, it isn't a big deal, it is similar to the prophets. I know Ajusi is a good person. I just don't like the word character. It had been a week since Kim Dokja dropped the bomb. The party members thought about Kim Dokja's words in their own way. In summary, this was the feeling. On the first day, all party members felt shock. On the second day, they thought it was similar to what already happened. Joonghyun said, thinking about it, this is the same thing as the constellations. On the third day, some people were amazed by the novel. Lee Seolwa said, how much importance did I have? On the fourth day, they thought Kim Dokja was like a god of this world if he read the novel. Lee Gil-young said, I knew that Hyung was a god. On the fifth day, there were people claiming that Kim Dokja should be the one comforted, not the party members. Shin Yusung said, perhaps he is the one having the hardest time right now. Lee Hyun-sung heard the story and said, certainly, we don't know how Dokja Sasai is feeling now. A few days ago, Joonghyuk Sasai disappeared. The party members nodded in agreement with Lee Hyun-sung. Eventually, their gazes once again concentrated on Lee Jae-hai. Jae-hai. Lee Jae-hai was red-faced as she yelled. How can I say anything when Ajusi is walking around like a dead man? Still. Then why didn't Dokja Ajusi say anything? He just deceived us the whole time. Jae-hai. Joonghyun called out and Lee Jae-hai bowed her head. Joonghyun kept speaking. We can't ignore Dokja Sasai's choice just because we don't understand it. I don't know the reason, but it must have been necessary for Dokja Sasai. Dokja Sasai would have thought about it in his own way. Uni, do you think we are just characters? I also don't know. However, so what if we are characters living in a scenario? It isn't Dokja Sasai's fault that such a novel exists. It made sense. Kim Dokja didn't create this world. He was just a reader who accidentally read the novel. Characters in a novel, that's how it was. From the moment this damn scenario started, they were puppets of the constellations. It didn't feel very real to hear such a story now. Lee Jae-hai bit her lips for a long time before opening her mouth. I understand. I'll go and speak to him. Instead, Yusung and Hyun-sung Ajusi should go with me. Shin Yusung and Lee Hyun-sung glanced at each other after hearing Lee Jae-hai's words. I visited him after dinner yesterday. I talked to him 3 days ago. Lee Jae-hai's face was pale as she looked around the party members. What? I am the only one who hasn't gone? I had mixed feelings about the party members who came to me one by one. Lee Seolwa appeared in the middle of the night and inserted a story pack into my perfectly fine arm. Then when I opened my eyes in the morning, there was a huge monster and insect king in front of me. I was the one who did something wrong, so I couldn't figure out how to react when the party took care of me this way. If we are characters, Dokja Sasai threw yourself several times in front of these characters. I remember it and I'm sure the others do as well. Those were Joonghyun's words. Ajusi, I'm young and I'm not sure why you said that. Still, I know it is very hard for you right now. Shin Yusung and Lee Gil-young had told me. SSI, my manual doesn't tell me how to deal with this situation. So don't be too troubled and come back as usual. Lee Hyunsung was Lee Hyunsung, as always. I'm not good at comforting people. If I'm really in that novel, shouldn't you already know? In addition, Lee Jae-hai. The comfort accumulated like spring raindrops. It was quiet enough not to notice it was comforting. Snow was piling up underneath the walls. It marked the winter season. I looked down at the citizens who were in the process of removing the snow. In a world turned upside down and where monsters were rampant, we still had to clear the snow. The snow that wasn't cleared in time would become solid ice and would be a nuisance. Are the preparations good? I turned around and saw Kyrios floating in the air. Kyrios had regained his momentum and had been in charge of training the group's martial arts. I'm working hard. The 80th scenario, Constellation and Demon War, would soon begin. Currently, the maximum scenario we could advance to through the context of the constellations was the 65th scenario. In other words, we had to build enough stories to break through the 65th scenario and reach the second context of the constellations. After that, Kim Dokja's company would also qualify for the 80th scenario. The stories are steadily accumulated and we are smoothly clearing the scenario. In any case, the scenarios in the 60s have a similar difficulty apart from Gigantomachia. From Demon World Spring to Torch That Swallowed the Myth. We secured a different probability than before and cleared the scenarios vertically. In the scenarios in the 60s, there was no nebula that could deal with us. In addition, the promised advertisement with the mass production maker began and the share prices of Kim Dokja's company soared. At the same time, the advertisement of the mass production maker appeared on the panel in midair. The scenario, it has numerous paths. Along with my voice that was speaking, several cars on the screen were racing towards the portal. There was only one car that didn't choose the portal. It was the X-grade Ferrorigine that Han Soo-young was driving. Everyone has their own way. The X-grade Ferrorigine passed the scattered cars and ran through the darkness. The screen zoomed in on Han Soo-young's face as she lip-synced to my words. However, the real power is to run on a road without a road. The logo of the mass production maker appeared on the black screen. I felt a bitter taste in my mouth. This old man's inspiration wasn't normal. He used the words he told me in the advertisement. I couldn't believe this advertisement would work on the constellations. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon likes this advertisement. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband wants the X-grade Ferrorigine. Your ad has stimulated the desire to buy in some constellations. There it was. Kyrios clicked his tongue while watching the advertisement with me. The transcendent from Murim seemed unable to accept modern civilization. I can't understand. Why ride that machine? I can run a lot faster than it with my martial arts. That's true. The disciple of Breaking the Sky hasn't returned yet? I shut up at the sudden question. He could only be talking about one disciple of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. I'm not worried because he is someone who will find his own way. I was worried. I didn't know what that sunfish was doing again. My depression returned as I thought about the regressor. I couldn't completely cover my anxiety, despite reminding myself that not many things could touch the present Joonghyuk. However, I was forced to believe in him right now. It was like the days when I only knew him in print. He will appear somewhere in the next scenario area. He is such a person. Reincarnation Island won't be easy. I know. I nodded. Kyrios was a transcendent and had already visited the Reincarnation Island. Kyrios' gaze turned to below the walls. I was able to see Jang Haeung, standing alone a bit further away from the party members. Take Haeung with you on this journey. This guy has made progress in breaking the sky. He won't be a burden. I was going to take him anyway. Jang Haeung was an indispensable figure for this scenario. The place where he got the name King of Transcendence was the Reincarnation Island. I waved lightly and Jang Haeung, who was looking over here, quickly turned his head away. I gazed at the distant sky again. I could feel the vibrations of the watch needle ticking around my wrist. There were 21 days until the Constellation and Demon War. I quietly turned on the smartphone and opened the file of Ways of Survival. It was because of this novel that I hurt the group members, but it was also because of the novel that I could see them. In the midst of these contradictory feelings, I opened the section on the Constellation and Demon Way. The first sentence of the Constellation and Demon War began as followed. Finally, the season of destruction was slowly coming to this world. The Nebula Eden. At the entrance of the Martial Arts Hall, which normally wouldn't be popular, crowds of angels were gathered together. Ah, that incarnation that is a human body? The angels were peeping at a man with a bare upper body, swinging a sword through the air. At first glance, he seemed to just be holding the sword, but he was actually cutting the air with the sword. Any angel with good eyes could tell that the blade was pointing down at a very fine speed. It was Joonghyuk's repeated training when he wanted to forget time. It was to lengthen the time of the moment and to feel the eternity that was coming at that time. The surrounding air was roughly shaken by his movements. It was restrained like a crouching dragon. The fact that it was understated meant that there was something that hadn't erupted. It's great. Even narrative-grade constellations can't easily rush at you now. Joonghyuk turned his head and saw a pale-faced archangel. The person who recorded everything in Eden. Metatron laughed as Joonghyuk's eyes asked why he came. I came to give a bit of advice. If you are going to remove your top every time you train, you should move to another place. The probability density of Eden in this place is the most appropriate for training. It is thanks to you that the little angel's morals are. Metatron, why did you show me that revelation? Metatron knew the other person wasn't listening at all and changed his words. I told you it was a bargain. You will side with good at the duet between good and evil. It was nothing more than that. Are you trying to split apart Kim Dokja's company? Why would Eden do such a thing? I know that you are paying special attention to Kim Dokja. I guess that you are trying to keep his power in check. Is that why you're holding a protest here, to the point of taking off your top? Your words don't make sense. Metatron shook his head as if he couldn't tell which side made sense. Joonghyuk kept swinging his sword through the air. It was like he was slowly cutting a virtual adversary. If you are going to continue with the illegal demonstration, please leave Kim Dokja's company officially and join Eden. Then you will be allowed to take off your top. Give me the next chapter of the revelation. Is that all the information you had? Haven't you thought that I might be giving you false information? It is better than the demon kings who lie. Is that why you came to us instead of Asmodeus? If the demon kings know the information, then you will definitely know it as well. Huh. Metatron still hadn't forgotten the day Joonghyuk invaded Eden alone. He broke through the entrance guarded by the Power's angels and Virtue's angels. Even the demon kings didn't dare do such a thing. In fact, if Metatron hadn't stopped it, then Joonghyuk would have died in Michael's hands on that day. Joonghyuk said, "Give me the revelation. Isn't it enough that I played your game until now?" Metatron's mouth twisted unpleasantly. A cold light flashed in Metatron's eyes as he gazed at Joonghyuk. Incarnation, Joonghyuk. The information I gave you isn't technically a revelation. It was information received from a special existence. Special existence? Do you really want to know? Metatron stared at Joonghyuk for a moment before slowly looking up. Joonghyuk also raised his head. For a moment, the sky of Eden distorted. Some of the angels around the training hall sat down with a small scream. Joonghyuk instinctively grabbed the black demon sword. A demon king? No. It was more chaos than demonic. Your sponsor feels uncomfortable with this heterogeneous being. Joonghyuk blinked and his surroundings changed. It was the center of the star stream. An intangible darkness filled this space. There was a big existence that was too much even for the transcendent Joonghyuk. Joonghyuk asked, "Who are you?" The constellation's secretive plotter is looking at the incarnation, Joonghyuk. The darkness spoke. It has been a long time, puppet of the oldest dream. Chapter 357. Forgotten people of the scenario. Part 2. The wintertime flowed quickly. Kim Dokja's company rapidly cleared up to the 65th scenario and reached the second context of the constellations a week ago. We finally succeeded in meeting the minimum challenge condition for the 80th scenario. The advertisement payment has arrived from the mass production maker. You have received 2,500,000 coins. The nebula's funds accumulated quickly. 2.5 million coins. It seemed that sales of the X-grade Ferrorigine were booming. Now we had been paid a portion of the sales revenue and we would continue to receive more income in the future. It's time. Finally, the day of the scenario arrived. I looked around at the prepared party members. Lee Hyunsung, Young Hee-won, Lee Jae-hai, Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-young. In addition, there was Jang Haeung. Dokja SSI, is it really okay to leave this way? Lee Hyunsung spoke in a somewhat uneasy manner. It was understandable. A week ago, my order was to rest and do nothing until the 80th scenario opened. This relaxed discipline doesn't make sense. Discipline. It was the words of a true soldier who lost his cartridge and safety pin. No matter what we do, it is impossible to catch up with the top-ranking constellations. The important thing isn't what we do here but what we do in that place. By the way, I feel like a person is missing. Sooyoung SSI went first. She doesn't listen to orders. The company didn't have any employees who were good at listening. Well, Han Sooyoung would surely survive. I turned my head and saw my mother and the other wanderers watching us from the front door of the industrial complex. Then, we will be going. Take care. I entrusted the security of Seoul to my mother and the wanderer forces. They were people who didn't feel greedy for the latter scenarios. Rather than clearing the scenario, they were determined to live in their own way. Lee Seolwa and Gong Pildu decided to stay in Seoul to supervise and manage the incarnations. I will leave Seoul to you. Lee Seolwa nodded. On the other side of the square, Gong Pildu was surrounded by incarnations targeting the early stage scenarios and was explaining something in a brusque manner. The important thing is to seize the best position. You have to occupy the good land before anyone else. Understood? It should be okay. I will join later with the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Go ahead. I nodded to Kyrios in the distance and sent a signal into the air. Soon, there was a low-grade Dakibi responsible for the scenario transfer. Kim Dokja's company. Are the preparations finished? Start transferring us. The low-grade Dakibis recited something and we were sucked into the portal that appeared at our feet. It was a pretty advanced portal, which meant I didn't feel dizzy when the space changed. How much time passed? You have entered the waiting room for the 80th scenario. Rather than the peaceful scenery of Gwangwamun, a pale marble waiting room appeared. The waiting room was seething with constellations and incarnations who had arrived in advance. When will the scenario start? Open it quickly. There is no time. There were familiar faces among the constellations. One of them was the brash swamp predator. I thought he was dead because he hadn't been seen since the start of the Demon King selection, but he was still alive. Young Hee-won muttered from behind me. There seem to be many great constellations. Ajusi, there is Ranveer Khan and Fehu over there. I can see Papyrus and Tamna. The members of Kim Dokja's company stuck to my back like penguins enduring the cold. They seemed like rural people who just came to Seoul. Lee Jae-hai licked his lips and asked, Ajusi, what should we do? Smile while you can smile. In the distance, a few constellations from Olympus waved to this side. Dionysus and Aphrodite. They probably didn't come to perform again this time. After that, several constellations from Vedas were soon, including the supreme god of light, Surya. Maybe Anna Croft and Joonghyuk would also be mixed in among them. The Demon King, Duke of Everywhere, is staring at you. The Demon King, eyes that see the forbidden, is checking you. As expected, these guys were here as well. The constellation Guardian of Youths and Travel yawns as if bored. The constellation Savior of Corruption is revealing a ferocious spirit towards you. The Archangels of Eden as well. The scale of the 80th scenario was truly different. We had to now compete with these terrible narrative-grade constellations. In the center of the square, a Dakibi emerged. It was Baihyung. Everyone is gathered. I am Dakibi Baihyung and I'm in charge of this scenario. General, this scenario was hosted by a great Dakibi. It seemed that Baihyung's status in the bureau had increased considerably. Originally, the stage of the Constellation and Demon War was scheduled for another place. Then Reincarnation Island was selected as a scenario area for special reasons. Well, don't we all have to do what our bosses want? Several of the constellations burst out laughing. This was the humor of the star stream or the bureau. That Baihyung jerk, he was in a form that wasn't scary. Some constellations might be unfamiliar with this stage. It is a very old place, and it is rarely used anymore. It has been lost in the flow of the time. Along with Baihyung's words, images started to flow on the screens in the sky. The stage of the upcoming scenario was Reincarnation Island. We came here to participate in the Constellation and Demon War. I don't care about the stage. Don't expect much. This is a world with a bunch of sword masters and ninth circle magicians. The constellations spoke sarcastically, like they had already experienced the scenario. Then Baihyung said, "Sword Master, this time, you can leave those worries behind. It is because this worldview is special." Baihyung's words caused a fuss among the constellations, but he continued speaking. In the days when the island opened, there were no concepts like Sword Master, Ninth Circle Magician, or even magic circles. This is an old island. Many constellations listened to Baihyung's words. Those paying special attention were members of the Gourmet Association. Perhaps they knew some information about this island. Well, you'll know once you personally experience it. I'll start with the explanation necessary for the scenario. Before entering the main island that is the stage for the Constellation and Demon War, you will experience the tutorial area first. Soon a map of the island appeared. There was a large island floating in the middle of the universe, with numerous small islands surrounding it. Baihyung pointed to the outermost islands. You will start at the island's edge, the small islands. Through this tutorial, you will learn how to adapt to the island. Then you will be given a scenario where you will advance to the main island, the main stage of the Constellation and Demon War. Based on the explanation, it was an existing rule of Reincarnation Island. It was a welcome thing for me. Of course, it wasn't the same for other constellations. Tutorial? We are constellations. Are you joking right now? No, of course, you don't necessarily have to perform the tutorial. There are many ways to go straight to the main island. Therefore, don't be too angry. Dakibis usually speaking like this meant that if they didn't proceed with the tutorial, the scenario would be like hell. In fact, if they knew what would happen on these islands, perhaps half the constellations here would withdraw their application. Baihyung noticed my gaze and winked at me. Originally, scenarios should start without any explanation, and mine has been going on for too long. Please pick a small island to start at. If you want to start on the same island, you can choose the same island. Baihyung concluded his explanation, and the constellations started to pick their place of departure. My party members picked the same island. There was no need to split apart when we could go together. Some constellations noticed and chose the island that I chose. They were going to come out like this from the beginning. I looked around at the party members. Do you remember what I said yesterday? Joonghyuk replied. Once the scenario starts, we have to run to the middle of the island. Yes. Don't think about fighting with other people and run straight to the middle of the island. This scenario was completely different from all the other scenarios we experienced. It might be the tutorial, but there was a chance the party members might not survive. I knew from reading Ways of Survival, so none of the party members questioned my suggestion. I somehow felt bitter. The constellations were ready and Baihyung's words were heard. Let's start the scenario transfer. I held unbroken faith in my hands. Every minute in this scenario was important, including the time it took to draw the sword. Everyone, let's meet in the village. At the same time, my party members and I turned into a group of lights. A new main scenario has arrived. Main scenario number 80, Reincarnation Island, has begun. The message was heard and the darkness became brightly lit. The smell of grass entered my nose. I was thrown into the forest area of the island. I didn't see any of the party members around. They had probably been transferred to other places on the island. You are currently in the expedition area of Island 531. Find a village with guides. Hidden scenario, survival game has begun. At almost the same time, the messages of the Dakibis poured from the sky. It won't be fun like this, right? The taste of survival is a good start. Constellations, please feel like you have returned to the past through a fierce competition for survival. Hidden scenario, survival game, category, hidden. Difficulty level, SSS. Clear conditions, enter the island's village or kill your competitors who entered together with you. Time limit, 24 hours. Compensation, 50,000 coins, clear the tutorial area. Failure, death. I thought it would be like this. The Dakibis who chose this island as the stage couldn't afford to let go. At almost the same time, I felt an ominous presence around me. It was too late to hide my figure. The Demon King Magic Peacock of Geometry is showing hostility towards you. There was a presence in the bushes. It was one of the Demon Kings who followed me. The Demon King of the 65th Demon Realm, Andrealphus. Demon King of Salvation. You defeated Demon King Amdusius? Dark blue demonic energy was burning from the hands of the colorful feathered person. Andrealphus was a Demon King known for having learnt all types of magic. Don't be arrogant like a stud horse. The peacock-like person spat words out of his beak and ran towards me while chanting a spell. Perhaps he set me as the first hunting game. I also ran towards him. Andrealphus muttered, "Your footwork is terrible and your skills are absurd. It is the level of a normal human. You managed to beat Amdusius with only this?" I ignored him and ran hard. It was much slower than usual, because I wasn't using Way of the Wind. Andrealphus mockingly declared, "Die." The magic he cast was the 9th circle Hellfire. It was literally borrowing the flames of Helland. I wouldn't be able to endure a direct hit. However, something strange happened the moment he cast a spell. The Hellfire, which should have burnt the whole forest, only made small sparks before turning off. This island's probability doesn't allow the spell, Hellfire. The confused Andrealphus stared at me. I was now right before his nose. This island has no sword masters or 9th circle magicians. The astonished eyes of Andrealphus grew bigger. Then is Hellfire possible? It was unbelievable, but this was the law of the island. It was the place where the most powerful probability of the star string dominated. There is the powerful effect of probability on this island. The attributes window isn't available on this island and the overall stats will be reset. The system wasn't available on this island. The usage of most skills, created after the first generation, is limited on this island. On this island, the proficiency of stigmas and stories are reset. All the fighting skills obtained were useless. Andrealphus, who was belatedly trying to cast a defense skill, got a stiff face. I ignorantly swung my sword without any skills. The blow, which contained no skill, pierced the heart of Demon King Andrealphus. Unbroken faith was a few times heavier than normal. My hand holding the sword trembled. The benefits of my overall stats had disappeared. In the forest, the hot sun was burning my skin. I pulled my sword out of the Demon King's dead incarnation body while sweating. It was hard to even hold the sword thanks to my poor muscles. This is why I don't like the old stories. This world had no sword masters, no SSS grade hunters, no systems, and no attributes window. The old stories are responding to your gaze. Reincarnation Island. This was the tomb of the first-generation stories that died out in the star stream. Chapter 358. Forgotten People of the Scenario. Part 3. Lee Hyun-sung had a thought. This must be how his grandfather who fought in the Vietnam War felt. It was a lush, leafy forest. Lee Hyun-sung hid between trees that boasted an unusual size and remembered his survival training. Go to the nearby reed forest while crawling low. Lee Hyun-sung moved through the forest by alternating between low crawls and high crawls. He wanted to run to the field straight away, but there were a few groups of constellations moving. Lee Hyun-sung saw someone moving and quickly hid himself at the base of a tree, holding his breath. The Demon King of Salvation definitely chose this island. How are we going to distribute it if we hunt him? The one who cuts off his head will get half. There were the murmurs of the constellations. They were all targeting Kim Dokja. He wanted to run out and get their heads straight away. Unconditionally run towards the center of the island. Kim Dokja had told them. Only then could they survive this bloody survival game. This was the message of a man who knew the future of this world. He felt he should have asked Kim Dokja more details about ways of survival. The more information in the manual, the better. What would happen to his future self and the life he was living? It isn't the time to think useless things. Lee Hyun-sung slapped both of his cheeks. There must have been a reason Kim Dokja didn't tell him those things. Now was the time to focus on the situation. Rustle. There was another noise from nearby. No voices could be heard. Someone was coming this way. There were cautious movements. It was a person who had the basics of using cover. The sound was getting closer. Rustle. If they kept coming in this direction, they would encounter Lee Hyun-sung sooner or later. Lee Hyun-sung nervously pulled out a dagger. Kim Dokja told them to avoid combat as much as possible, but that couldn't always happen. I should do it well if I can't avoid it. In the past few years, Lee Hyun-sung became much stronger than before through training. Now he wasn't the soldier who turned away from injustice in the first scenario. Finally, the other person was right in front of him. Yet something felt strange. The pattern of a special uniform could be seen through the long reeds. Lee Hyun-sung muttered reflexively, "Hewan SSI? Yua." The sword of judgment popped through the bushes. Lee Hyun-sung reflexively bent his waist and avoided the sword. After a while, Joonghyuk's head protruded from the bush. Hyun-sung SSI? I'm sorry. It's fine. Are you okay? However, he wasn't able to be glad about meeting his colleague due to the desperate situation. He sighed and saw the two children glued firmly to Joonghyuk's waist. They were Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-young. Lee Hyun-sung watched the sickly pale faces of the two children and asked, "What is the status of the children?" "I don't know exactly. I just met them. They must have seen something shocking." A shocking sight. Certainly, this island was a strange place. The Heracles shield on Lee Hyun-sung's back was very heavy. It was an item that he normally would have felt the weight. Lee Hyun-sung carried Shin Yu-sung and said, "I think we should go to the center of the island and meet Dokja SSI." "Where is the center of the island?" "The direction of the smoke." He looked up and saw smoke rising through the big trees. It wasn't too far away. Lee Hyun-sung started to move with Joonghyuk. Maybe it was due to the presence of a strong colleague, but the heartbeat seemed to be moving at a different tempo. How long had it been? They soon arrived at the edge of the forest. A large field unfolded in front of their eyes. It wasn't far away from the location where the smoke was ignited. The problem was that there were a bunch of people blocking the field. Joonghyuk frowned and opened her mouth. "Do you think they are chasing us?" The constellations armed with weapons and star relics were searching around the field. Among them were people Lee Hyun-sung had seen earlier. Don't fight and run. It is better to avoid them, but once they entered the field, they would surely become visible. There was a way around the forest, but they couldn't guarantee how long it would take. Then Shin Yusung opened her mouth from Lee Hyunsung's back. A juicy. Excuse me. Shin Yusung's finger pointed to the forest on the opposite side of the field. Something was running. There were rough and wild cries. Lee Hyunsung was familiar with the monster species that emerged from the forest. They were monsters that regularly appeared in fantasy manhwa and novels. Joonghyuk asked, "Aren't they orcs?" "They are too weak to appear in the 80th scenario." Orcs. They were representative monsters that emerged in numerous fantasy genres. I've never fought an orc up to now. It was strange when thinking about it. Orcs were famous monsters that everyone knew about. Yet they made it to the 80th scenario without meeting any orcs. In the field, the constellations exclaimed, ignoring us to this degree. Releasing this crap? They also thought it was absurd. As if there was no need to use a weapon, a single constellation stretched out his fist towards the rushing orcs with an annoyed expression. They were usually monsters that would be killed in one blow. Yet at this moment, something strange happened. An orc swung its axe, and the fist of the constellation was broken. The moment the bewildered constellation was about to shout something, another stone axe came flying from somewhere. The head of the constellation literally burst apart. The incarnation body of the constellation fell down stupidly. The orcs roared and laughed, turning the field into a terrible place of slaughter. Quackhack. The fearsome constellations who could break mountains and split apart the sea. These constellations were dying, their bodies torn apart by only two orcs. Joonghyuk and Lee Hyunsung fell down as well. It was reality without a sense of realism. It was that easy to die? A constellation? To an orc? Run away. The orcs tore apart 10 constellations in an instant and were approached this forest area. Please don't let me meet orcs. I repeated this prayer in my head as I moved through the lush forest. My breathing was intermittent in this heat and my steps were heavy. I hadn't walked for very long, but I was feeling exhausted as sweat flowed all over my body. I didn't know the absence of my stats would be this great. It was unavoidable with only 1 point in physique. To make matters worse, it felt like my shoulders were being forced closer together. This was the reality of the island. Reincarnation Island. It was the place where the oldest stories of the star stream were gathered. Here, all the buffs accumulated from outside data were released. In other words, it was a place where only the innate abilities of the body were available. This was why I could easily defeat the 65th ranked Demon King. Many constellations neglected physical training. Then once they entered this island, they made a mistake of misinterpreting their combat power. It was the same for Andrealphus. You have killed one competitor to date. You will receive additional rewards when entering the safe zone. I tried not to miss the occasional message as I moved through the shade created by the lush trees. In order to prevent dehydration, I plunged my face into a rare stream and drank the water. It was clear and cold enough that my soul felt purified. The first generation water is so clean. In fact, I wasn't adverse to the old stories. As a reader, I liked the old stories. A story of heroes filled with dreams and adventures. Fighting dragons in forgotten mountain ranges or looking for a legendary sword with beautiful elves and brave dwarves. The problem was that I now entered the old story. A world without the power of the attributes window and no convenient functions. The danger here wasn't only the monsters. Since I couldn't receive the effects of the skills, my immune system would decrease and I had to be wary of the cold and diseases. In the original novel, some constellations died after being affected by infectious diseases. In fact, the following sentence had appeared in Ways of Survival. The constellations, who were accustomed to the attributes window and the convenience of the system, died powerlessly. They were able to raise a proper resistance to the world that couldn't be read with their sensibilities. The constellations, who reigned in the star stream, died because they couldn't overcome diseases or orcs. Some constellations couldn't endure the disgrace and took their own lives. It was funny. The participants of Island 861 are wiped out. The participants of Island 1896 are wiped out. It had started. By now, the entire island would be engulfed in a terrible tragedy. The constellations died to lesser monsters that they had been ignoring in the meantime. Many constellations are greatly shocked by the difficulty of Reincarnation Island. Many constellations are sending a protest message to the Bureau. It was useless to protest. The island was originally like this. Demon kings or archangels, anyone could die in this place if they were a bit careless. I reflexively held my breath as I heard a sound coming from a nearby bush. I only knew one monster on the island that made a cry like this. It was a small monster half my height with green skin. A goblin. I sighed with relief. It was worth an attempt if it was a goblin, not an orc. There was a deafening roar. I reflexively swung my sword in the direction of the cry. My body was dragged in the direction of the swing due to my poor strength. Fortunately, the first one who jumped out was hit by the blindly swung sword and rolled on the ground. The problem was after this. One law of the first generation. Goblins will never move alone. Two goblins jumped out after the injured goblin and rapidly narrowed the distance, swinging their clubs. The club swung by one of them caused a long scratch on the outside of my left thigh. Damn, in this place, the goblins were scarier than the demon kings. The exclusive skill Fourth Wall is activated. If it hadn't been for the fourth wall, I might have died to the goblins like other constellations. Then an ominous voice was heard. The administrator of the island is concerned about the fairness of the skill you are using. The administrator of the island declares this skill isn't available here. The probability of the star stream agrees with the administrator's complaint. The fourth wall is revealing discomfort. Kim Dok Ja, so RRY. Huh? I have no string th on this is land. I felt the barrier covering my spirit fading. It felt like a sensation sleeping inside me was activated. At this moment, I realized what was happening. The thickness of the fourth wall has become thinner. Your mental strength, reinforced by the fourth wall, has returned to its original state. The physical pain relieved by the fourth wall has returned to normal. Damn it.